They said at 9 o'clock. Time to push the big red button. All right, and it looks like this is showing a message is sent. Hello, this is Jesse. Hey Jacob, how are you? Yeah, the GPS light was green originally, and then it went red, and then it's off now. So let's see if it comes back on.
Maybe try holding your SOS button down again.
Okay, so it turned red, so that probably means it's canceling. Now I'm getting a green GPS light.
That should be blinking green.
Yep, blinking green. All right, now it's turned green, and I've got a green GPS, and we're blinking green on the GPS, blinking green on the SOS.
Oh, there we go. We got coordinates. All right, awesome. Anything else you want to go over?
Nope, that's perfect. Is it okay to do a test like this once a month or something like that, just to make sure things are working great?
Yeah, definitely. Just keep sending us the email with the test request form. You can just reuse that, send it in to us, and we'll send you back confirmation.
All right, perfect. Thanks for all the help today. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you. Bye.
Yep, take care. And we want the car wash stuff. Today, we're getting the plane ready for our first really good long cross country together. Alyssa and I have been planning this trip for months, and we're super excited. And we're excited to be able to travel by plane. It's not something that we've really had a chance to experience a lot together, but we're excited to do it this time. And I've been flying a bunch, building time and exploring new areas and meeting new people and going to new airstrips and doing all those things. And along the way, I've kind of picked up different tips and tricks from different pilots. I've read a bunch of different magazines and things like that on how to be prepared. And if I'm honest, and I think if most pilots, I won't say everybody because somebody out there has got this dialed in, but most pilots and most planes are really ill prepared for what we're asking them to do. The good news is it's rarely an issue because nothing really happens that often. But when it happens, it becomes a really big deal. So today I want to work on getting the plane prepared the way it should be for the type of missions that we've been doing and we're going to do. If you were packing for a long cross-country road trip in a car, this probably wouldn't be that much stuff. Of course, that's not going with us. That's for washing the plane. But the rest of this stuff is mostly things that we keep in the airplane at all times, and they have many different functions. I sat down and compiled a few different lists that I could find that are good recommendations for things that you should keep in an airplane at all times, no matter where you're flying. I think something that's hard to convey is that flying is not flying. If you're not a pilot, or if you're a pilot like me, I guess, who's not really ventured into really new areas, there really isn't one way to load an airplane. It's really based on what you're doing. And just like commercial aviation, weight and space are at a premium. We can't just pack the kitchen sink in here. Everything has to be well thought out, well packaged, and compact. On the particular mission that we're planning right now, and honestly on most of the missions in the area where we live, it is not uncommon to fly over large areas that are unpopulated, potentially wilderness areas, and by definition that means there are no roads. So if we have some sort of mechanical problem in the airplane, we're not going to fall out of the sky, but we're probably going to have to make an emergency landing somewhere that's going to be very difficult to access. And the mission that we're working on right now is no different. We're going to be traveling over large areas, although very quickly, it won't take that long. But if we were to have a mechanical issue or something that forced us to land, we would want to be able to survive in that area until we're able to be located. Which brings me to another subject, getting located. In the comfort of my office chair, I sat down and put together this guy. And I sorted everything kind of by the category that it falls into most of the time. Of course, a tool could very likely become something that we would use for survival, or something that we use for aviating could become a survival piece. But there's a saying in aviation, if it's within your reach, it's survival gear. If it's outside your reach, it's camping gear. And that really speaks to being prepared. So for example, I have 2 headlamps with new batteries in our survival gear, and I also have 2 headlamps in our aviating list. These are not the same headlamps. If they're not in the survival gear, it's very likely that they'll do us no good. What if we have to land the airplane in water or something like that? Anything that's in this package is very likely to be useful, and anything outside of that is probably just going to end up floating to the bottom of wherever we land. It's worth mentioning early in this video that aircraft accidents, while sensational, are actually fairly rare statistically. Compared to the number of hours that people drive cars every day, aircraft accidents are actually quite uncommon. So this video is not meant as a scare tactic or to encourage fear of flying, but rather to demonstrate how we manage the risks of taking these trips and traveling by air. There are basically 3 places that we can put things in the airplane. We've got the front of the cockpit, we've got the passenger area of the cockpit, and we have the baggage area. As you can imagine, accessibility of the baggage area in flight is quite poor, but it does provide an area to store things that maybe would be otherwise in the way. We need to really think not just about what we load and how heavy it is, but where it's located in an airplane. Not to get too technical about airplanes, but the way an airplane is loaded will actually affect its ability to fly, and also how well and how efficiently it flies. So if we load the things lightly and efficiently, and we also think about where we load them, they'll be easy to access if necessary, and they'll also help us to fly better and more efficiently. I read a really great book called The Skylane's Companion. If you haven't read it and you're a private pilot or you are in GA, General Aviation, Google it and download it. If I can, I'll link to it at the bottom of this video. It's a fantastic book. It's written in story format, and I feel like it tells some really great lessons about becoming a proficient pilot and becoming a conscious and a conscientious pilot. That book had a really great recommendation, and that is that when you buy an airplane, that you take everything out of it and you put it in garbage bags. There's like 5 different garbage bags. Things you need, things that are important for the airplane, survival gear, trash, etc. So maybe not 5 trash bags, but what I'd like to do today is actually completely unload the airplane and sort everything and make sure that we're thorough and that we have everything in the plane we think we have and we know where it's located. And then also with the survival gear, what I'd like to do is take it a step further and make it extremely easy to grab with one hand. I think that about does it for all the stuff. Actually, I forgot something. There's a very critical thing up here. Take that off. Yep, we're gonna want that. All right, I think what I'll probably do is just start making kind of an area for tools, aviating, and survival. That ladder, that's definitely a tool. The wheel chock, that's definitely a tool. Tow bar, that's definitely a tool. Let's see, life jackets, flare gun, those will be survival. Now blankets, that's survival. Bear spray, survival. Wet sacks, radio, charts, owner's manuals, regulations, batteries, headlamp. Packed with compass and whistle and lighter, paracord, duct tape. Man, that's a tough one. Do you put in that survival or do you put that in tools? Survival book, tinder for fire starting, that goes in survival, and a bunch of batteries. Wow, if you would have asked me how much stuff is in this airplane, I would have probably guessed half that much stuff, which just goes to show how easy it is to stuff something in every cubby and corner. And that's why I want to go through this stuff, because ironically, as much stuff as you see here, I think there's some stuff that's missing, and there's probably a few things, not many, a few things that probably aren't necessary. I already found a problem with a very important piece of technology. This is a transceiver and it's on the air band. So we're actually basically have a handheld airplane radio in the cockpit. There's a few reasons for that. One, it's very easy to use for air to ground. So if for some reason we have somebody on the ground, you can talk to an airplane with this, right? Works good as a backup. So if something were to happen to the radios in our airplane, we could use this as a backup. It actually is able to connect through the adapters to a headset, so we can actually talk on this just like a regular airplane radio. And then of course, in the case of an emergency, we have this big red 121.5 emergency button, and we can contact, even an airliner could hear us and possibly help us in coordinating a search. The problem is, I have this DC charger that I thought was for this, and it doesn't fit. So this radio comes with a lithium ion battery pack, which is great, it's rechargeable, and that's what we normally leave in the airplane. But it also has this accessory that allows us to use AA batteries. And I think keeping that in the airplane makes sense, because if we're not able to charge this and it goes dead, it's basically just a boat anchor, right? But if we have this accessory and we have lots of AA batteries, hypothetically we could keep that radio going for quite a while. So apparently we need to add to the list finding the proper DC charger for that radio. So a fellow pilot just came by and noticed what I was working on here and had the same question. Was all of that in your airplane? And I'm like, yeah, can you believe that? I mean, it's not heavy, it's just a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of room in these airplanes, guys. If you've never been in one, if you put 4 people in there, I don't know how all this stuff actually still fits in there. It does. It's actually not a problem. It's just surprising, I think, when you lay it out on the ground and you really see it working here. So we kind of made some wagers on what this stuff weighs, and I probably am overestimating it at 100 pounds. He thought maybe 30. I wonder if I can find a scale around here and somehow kind of put all this stuff together in one spot and figure out how much weight we're actually talking here. All right, so I've got wagers at 30, 45, and 100. What's your guess? 75. Oh man, we got the spectrum here. All right, I got to do my due diligence and weigh it all out. All right, we are in luck. All right, that supposedly weighs 4.4 pounds. I don't think that's true. All right, I have no idea what's going on with the scale, but I'm gonna bite. So we're gonna load it up with just the survival stuff. See how much we can fit in here. Yeah, we'll put all this small stuff at the bottom. Oh, that water's heavy. 32.5 pounds. Or 32.4 pounds of survival gear. Oh, that's heavy. And aviating is about 20 pounds. $40.2 pounds. So we got 40, 20, 32. So that's 92 pounds. You want to know the answer? 92 pounds.
What?
Yeah. 30, 40, and like 25. Isn't that crazy? I was 100 pounds. You were close, 75, but I was within 8 pounds. And I was on the optimistic side. Somebody said 30 pounds. I think that person looks in the mirror and sees something very different, if you know what I mean. I'm gonna be honest, this is enlightening. You know, I'm totally guilty of that, like, well, I'll just add one more thing, well, I'll just add one more thing. And I think, let's be honest, it sneaks up on you. Of course, I don't know how accurate the scale is. Let's agree that it's not super accurate. It's probably not 200 pounds, but it's probably not 50 either. We're probably not that far off at maybe 85 to 90 pounds, something like that. So I think it's a good chance to sit here and look at every single item, things that you're like, oh, I might need that. You know what? If you think you're probably not going to need it, get rid of it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then it's time to go through this stuff with a fine-tooth comb, compare it to my list, and then figure out what's missing and what we still need to get to put in the plane. So screwdrivers, Phillips and flathead, check. Needle nose pliers. We do have wire, but it's in the survival gear. I guess my opinion is if you need the wire, you're probably in a survival situation, so it's nothing to unpack the survival gear to find it. So I'm actually gonna move the wire to survival, and we're gonna mark it checked off. Allen wrenches, let's see, we've got 3 of those. 1, 2, 3. Not sure why we have 3. Oh, this is Torx, that's why. Leatherman, check. Tire pressure gauge, check. Metric and standard crescent wrench. I don't even have that on here. Flashlight, and that works good. And this one has a red flashing on it. That one's tempting to keep in the survival gear as well. It's not on here. Flashlight. Fuel dipstick, fuel sump tool. We have 2 of those. Let's set that one out. We live in an era where everything's just so safe and so reliable. And guess what? If you break down nowadays and you have cell phone range, which is most places, not so much here, but a lot of the country, you're not gonna lose reception. Just call AAA or call your grandma or whatever, and they'll come get you, or maybe a passing motorist will help you. But I think as tedious as this seems, I can tell you that there's a moment in time, if you haven't already experienced this, where you're flying over a wilderness area and you kind of have that realization, like, I'm out here all alone. And even if somebody knows where you are, they don't know exactly where you are, and it's not a really great place. So if this feels good, it's definitely time consuming and not super fun, but it's way more fun to do this in a hangar on the ground peacefully than to be doing this somewhere in the backcountry remotely. Gloves, I must have those in survival. Jumper cable, check. Battery charger, flying shoes, those are in aviating, and control locks in aviating. Stuff we probably don't need. That in the plane either. Wow. All right, that's progress. Usually I keep this one and a flashlight, this wrench, tire gauge, fuel stick. The rest of that, well, keep those up front too. The rest of that kind of goes in the tool bin, tool bin, tool bin. Those go up front, tool bin. Batteries. Those can go in the glove box. One of those goes in the glove box. One goes in there. And those go in there. Wow, those are not cooperative. And let's see. Yeah, you go in there. And those go in there. All the manuals within reach of the pilot. And doggy bags. Perfect. Much smaller than it used to be. Well, we did really good on our list, but there are some things that are not in here. Some of them we won't be able to get, but I think we can get pretty close. So we probably better go shopping before things close to make sure that we can get this pretty much done today. Look at all the stuff that we removed. Is it non-important stuff? No. But is it essential? No. So I think we made some progress. I'll be curious later to weigh all that stuff, and we'll see what we ended up with. we did super good on shopping. We were able to make it to the outdoor store before they closed. That was something I was super concerned about, just because I could probably find this stuff at a hardware store, but I feel like at a outdoor store, you're more likely to find something that's probably more appropriate. And what was crossing my mind with a lot of this stuff was redundancy. I already have 2 headlamps in the airplane, but I really want to be able just to grab the survival bag. And you know what? Even if we were to have to do an emergency landing, toss it out the window right before you land. That way you know it's good, right? I mean, I'm just throwing things out there. So we're now redundant on headlamps. I picked up a folding saw. We have these in our car and our truck, and we have one at home, and they're super handy. They're compact and they keep the blade protected. It's a few extra ounces versus something like a cable saw or something, but it's also way more durable. We've cut logs out of the road with these before and had no problems. I grabbed a couple of lighters. I feel like these are cheap, but you know, they're probably gonna work. I could spend $30 on some sort of windproof special extra lighter, but you know what? The ones we have at home, they suck. We're trying to light the hot tub all the time and they just don't work. Grabbed a couple of cheap light sticks, grabbed a wad of rope. I feel like this is probably just a good idea to have in the plane anyway for who knows what, tying things down or making a clothesline or I don't know, all kinds of stuff. And I decided to go redundant on the Leatherman. I think it makes sense to have one of these accessible so that you're not tempted to pull it out of the survival kit. It's a few dollars, I get that, it's money. But when you're in a survival situation, it doesn't seem like anybody gives a crap about how much things cost, right? Like, just get me out of here. And that will about do it. We've got to get this wrapped up. The sun is setting and we've got to get the airplane cleaned up and get those things finished up. And then the airplane's basically ready for this long trip. Not sure those are gonna fit. I guess one will. I suppose that's probably better than nothing. Might need to work on that a little bit. It's a lot more compact. I had a great recommendation from a local pilot. Put a laminated list on the outside of your bag. That way you know what's in there, and then put expiration dates on the list. That way you know if something in there needs to be swapped out or goes bad or needs replaced, something like that. For example, those flares have an expiration date on them, so we should probably mark those with the expiration date so we know when to replace them. And then also weigh all this stuff and mark it with its weight. That way if you're not going on a long cross country over wilderness, or you're not going in the backcountry, and if weight is an issue, you can always remove it and you know what you've gained, or if you put it in, you know what you've lost. I've got a to-do list that I'm kind of creating of stuff that I didn't get to with this project, and I'm gonna add that to the list. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think just having a good list like this makes sense so you know what's in your airplane. I can tell you that this is one of those like a penny, a penny, a penny pretty soon makes a dollar. And it's really easy just to add a couple things each time you go fly, and before you know it, you've added 15 or 20 pounds unwittingly to the airplane. Otherwise, things are looking pretty tidy. I say we hit this with a vacuum and let's get outside, get it washed before we get dark, and we're there. Taxi and dry this thing off. Oh yeah. That's much drier. That's gonna save us a bunch of time. Wow guys, that sunset, I'm telling you, feels like a blessing for our trip. Our camera can't catch that. I mean, that's just, I don't even have any words for it. Hopefully you can see the beauty in the camera, and when that happens and we're out here working on the airplane and trying to make things better and safer for our trip, I feel like in some way that's reassurance that we're doing the right thing and that our trip is going to be a success. Over the winter, I took on what I would find to be a mammoth project. I didn't realize that when I started it. I've never waxed an airplane before. There's a lot of surface area on an airplane. If you've never washed one, you won't understand. It is not at all like washing a big truck or anything like a car. Every surface is accessible and big. So I spent some time waxing also, trying to make taking care of the airplane more user-friendly. But each time we wash and when we fly, the wax wears off, especially on the leading edges of the wing and on the strut and on anywhere on the nose. Being summertime right now, we get a lot of bugs that get smashed anytime we're low level in the bug zone. And so taking the time to wax those leading edges and things is just a good time saver, because when it comes time to wash, all you have to do basically is get it wet for a little bit and then they come right off. Otherwise, it is like scrubbing 10,000 bugs off of a grill that is 37 feet long. Not fun. The windscreen or windshield on an airplane is made from plexiglass. It's a polycarbonate, I think, something along those lines. It's a plastic material, and it is easily scratched. And the last thing we need is a bunch of scratches on the windshields of an airplane. So that's why there's all these bugs all over here. I did not use the scrubby brush on it. We'd rather clean that by hand. And it cleans fairly easily if we use the right cleaning products and the right technique, and it'll look super good until the next time we go flying. As with anything, but especially true in aviation, cleanliness isn't just a matter of like pride. It's not something that we do to be flashy. It's more a way of maintaining or being aware of what's happening with the airplane. So if we keep the belly of the airplane clean and something's leaking or we're getting something that's not working properly, it's much easier to see it or identify it early on. Versus if the airplane's kind of dirty and covered in mud and grass and all those things from being in the backcountry, and something goes wrong, you're a lot less likely to notice it. It's evenings like this that are super calm. It's midweek. There's nobody really flying. It's pretty quiet around the airport. I've got the hangar all to myself, and what's really nice, I guess, is a way to unwind and also take care of the airplane is to put on some music and start waxing. Well, I think we're done. It feels like this took a lot of time, and I guess this could give the impression that getting ready for a long trip is a massive time undertaking, and I don't think that's true at all. I think the truth is, this is more like preparation I probably should have done in the past, and I had done most of it, but maybe I hadn't been as thorough or as detailed as I could have been, and I wasn't as prepared as I am now. So I guess in fairness, although today we were talking about getting ready for this long trip, really this was kind of getting our affairs in order with the airplane so that when we do flying, we're definitely more prepared for situations that we hope will never happen but are possible. And also just taking good care of the airplane, making sure it's clean and waxed and all that jazz. So we're all done. We've got everything waxed. Windows are clean, carpets vacuumed. Plane's just nice and clean. I don't know about you guys, but when we do road trips, we just kind of like things to be nice and tidy. But you know what? We like them nice and tidy anyway. And with an airplane, thankfully, that's pretty easy, just because you don't really end up in a lot of really filthy places, and well, you just don't put filthy people in your airplane. There, that solves that problem. One thing left to do. How much weight did we save today? Wow, this says 17.4 pounds. And we didn't even include the battery graveyard. If we take the bucket out of that equation, let's call it 13 to 15 pounds. Not too bad. Oh, and we're more equipped than we've ever been.